Well, I couldn't be more excited to share Nikki Myers with you. She is the founder of Y12SR, which is Yoga for 12-Step Recovery. She's going to share that program with us and how we can get involved. She's also going to go deep into her story of addiction, relapse, and recovery. So here we go with Nikki Myers.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people. People who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Once again, Nikki, I am so excited to be sitting down and having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for agreeing to take some time. I know how valuable your time is, so welcome and thank you.
I'm grateful to be here, Sarah, and thank you for asking me. I'm absolutely honored.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, let's get right into it. You are the founder of Y12SR, and I want you to tell people that are watching right now, what is Y12SR and who is it for?
It is the Y12SR actually stands for, it's an acronym that stands for the Yoga of 12-Step Recovery. And what it is a 12-step based discussion and yoga practice that's open to anyone and everyone dealing with their own addictive behavior or the affected addictive behavior of others. We call this an open and inclusive group. Everyone's welcome at these meetings. If you're dealing with your own addictive behavior or you're affected by the addictive behavior of others. And I always speak about that. Ultimately, who is it? Who isn't affected by the, even at a gross level, we all are affected by the addictive behavior of others. So everyone is really welcome at these meetings and practices. And what we do is combine the cognitive pieces of the 12-step program with the somatic pieces of yoga. So it's this combination of two things. We say what we do is connect dots. And the dots that we're connecting are, number one, all the things we now know as a result of neuroscience about how addiction, what's going on in the brain of the of someone who's affected by the disease of addiction. So the neuroscience piece, as well as the very practical tools that are available through the 12-step program, right? The physical practices and really all the practices and philosophy of yoga, really, we find that those things are very much tied together. Plus, within that, trauma healing, right? So we're connecting those four dots. Trauma healing, all the things we know that are going on in the brain, the very practical tools of 12-step programs, as well as the tools and practices and philosophy that's available to us through yoga. And what the idea is to create what I love to call a sustainable platform for addiction recovery, right? We need more. I know I need it more than one thing. I needed a platform full of tools. Like I was telling you, I used to call it my tool basket. And listening to some folks talk, I've now said that I need a tool shed. I need a bunch of tools to keep me on path with this. And so what happens at a Y12SR meeting is that we do a discussion, and it's a 12-step based discussion. And then directly following that, or it could be before that, it doesn't matter which way this goes. But in most cases, it's directly following that. We do this trauma-informed themed yoga practice, right? Which is focused. The theme is whatever the topic that we're discussing in the meeting. So again, it's this way to combine the cognitive pieces that go on in our head with the body-based piece.
Well, and they say that, cells never lie. Like,
That's right.
right, we store things in our cells. And so being able to combine, that the stuff that's going on in our brains, which with what's going on in our bodies really allows us to move through a lot of the pain and a lot of the past that is holding us back in a lot of ways in our lives, especially for those of us that are dealing with addiction and that are in recovery. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Our theme is the issues live in our tissues.
Yes.
Right? That's the theme. The issues live in the tissues.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so there's got to be a way to move. I can talk about it all day long, right? But if I don't get at that body-based piece to move that energy out,
Mm-hmm.
right? To transform that energy, then there's a missing piece.
Mm-hmm.
So this is set up to hopefully add that missing piece, right? And connect it all and make it all connected.
I love it. And so are there specific poses is there a specific process when it comes to what is the experience of coming to a Y12SR class? So I know you said you have a meeting first. Are we talking, this is done in yoga studios? Is that how it's done?
It's done everywhere. This is done everywhere. So it's done in yoga studios. It's done in church basements. It's done in community centers. It's done anywhere and ever. It's done in treatment centers. It's done just about anywhere we can put some yoga mats. We're there. So it doesn't matter where it is.
That's amazing. So how can people learn more if they want to find a Y12SR in their area? And I also know that you do coaching, you do training where you encourage people and you train them on how to be a Y12SR coach. So how would somebody go about doing that?
That's exactly right. All you need to do is check out y12sr.com, www.y12sr.com, which has many pages that you can associate it with. One is the trainings. There's a drop down for the trainings, and that lists where the trainings are really all over the world, not just all over the country, but really all over the world now. And what we do in that training is prepare and equip yoga teachers, addiction recovery professionals, counselors, juvie hall folks, all of those kinds of things, how to lead Y12SR meetings and practices within their home community. Mm-hmm. That was the whole thought of this, that there needs to be a place, right, within where we can develop this kind of community to support us in recovery.
Well, that and the fact that we can't have Nikki Myers in every single yoga studio and church basement across the country and across the globe. So I love that you have these ambassadors that are now being able to further the message and reach more and more people. It is absolutely amazing what you're doing. Thank you for the work that you do with Y12SR and helping us to move through the trauma of addiction, because we need this work. We need it.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing too, getting the word out. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to now go deep into your story, because I had the privilege of hearing you speak in New York City last year at a She Recovers at the New York City event. And it was so incredible hearing your story. And I don't want to spoil any of it because it's powerful. And I think I was going to say something. I'm not. So I want you to go right in. I would love it if you don't mind taking us back to your childhood and sharing a little bit about how you were raised and what your family was like, and then moving us all the way through to your addiction and how it took a hold of your life, and then how you found recovery, and then also what happened afterwards, and then what led you to Y12SR, and that'll bring us full circle.
I love it. Well, thank you for asking. Really, thank you for asking. And, my childhood per se was, I can't say there were some joys, and one of my favorite words is right? And my parents were wonderful, and there were some things that happened to me in childhood that should never happen to a child, right? And that today I can hold both those things. And that's been a part of this journey for me, the ability to hold both. Right? The truth is, things happen to me in childhood that should never happen to a child. And I love and adore my mother and father. right? I love and adore my mother and father. Today, I can hold both those things. I don't have to ignore or deny or pretend that what happened didn't happen, because it did, right? And I can still love. I can still love and love deeply in the, and that's been the healing.
Yeah.
Right? That's been the healing. So, lots of things. I'm, as you can clearly see, an African American woman, right? And so I grew up I was born in 1953, right? So I'm getting ready to kick this year, 65. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Right? And you got to recognize culturally what was going on during that time period in the United States of America relative to many, many things. Culture, race, all of those kinds of things play a factor in some decisions that I began to make at about 13 years old, and the family situation, right? The whole 9 yards, right? And some decisions that I made when I got to be about 13 years old. Some things happened early on in my childhood that became what I always say. When I was growing up, there were no child protective services, right? There was none of that, none of that. So, I grew up in a culture where you got your little ass beat, right? And so, and that's exactly what, happened over the course of time with me. And part of, as a result of that, the programming that was written was, that I wrote was, you don't have a voice. When you use your voice, you get punished, right? That's kind of the programming that got written there. Well, I got to be about 13 years old, and I took my first drink, and all of a sudden, boy, did I have a voice, right? I got my voice back, and I just started doing some things, and I loved it. I loved it. I tell people all the time, thank God I found alcohol and drugs when I did. That this 13, 14-year-old mind did not have the ability to process the early childhood trauma that I experienced. I didn't have the ability to process any of that, right? And that stuff worked. It works. It works till it doesn't. It works till it doesn't. And we get to a point where, you can't just use that. It gave me a lot of relief, and I needed relief, right, for many, many, many periods of my life. The problem is, and I say this all the time relative to addiction, we confuse relief and resolve, right? We think that the relief is going to be the resolve, and it's not. It's not.
Like we think it's the answer. We think it's the thing that we've been looking. Right.
We think that I found, that's the way I felt. When, I first started drinking and drugging, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Right? I love this feeling. I've got my voice back, right? All the stuff, right? I'm uninhibited, right?
I know.
All the stuff.
Like finally I'm free to be who I really am. I can I can relate to that too.
Yeah, exactly. So I went through several things during those teenage years. Actually, I got married for the first time when I was 17 years old. Right? I was married, and I had my 2 children. I have 3 children, 2 living and 1 deceased child. And I had my children relatively early in my life. I had, I was raising kids in my early 20s, right? Through my late teens, through my early 20s. And drinking and drugging and doing the whole 9 yards. My first marriage was extremely abusive. I experienced domestic violence. Like you can't believe, by the time I found the 12-step program, which was when the first time when I was 34 years old, that program talks about jails, institutions, and death. I knew jails, institutions, and death.
Mm-hmm.
Even, the journey includes commercial sex work. It includes all of that stuff, all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1987, I found the rooms of the 12-step program. And I'm so grateful, so deeply grateful for that.
Can you share with us what led you to that? Was there a rock bottom moment for you?
In a way, there was a rock bottom. I ended up checking myself in the first treatment. And again, it was a matter of being, like we say, sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
Right? I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the revolving wheel of jails, institutions, and death. Jails, institutions. And by the time I walked in those rooms, I've seen so many people die as the result of addiction. But the way I speak about it, I was spiritually dead. I walked in there, I could barely put a sentence together. And I walked in there, severely spiritually dead, just spiritually dead.
And can I ask, are you still married at this point? And are you still raising your 2 teenage at that point children?
Well, my children are now, I actually have grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Oh my God. Amazing.
I have 2 beautiful great-grandchildren. So I actually have grandchildren and great-grandchildren now.
But when you first set foot in that first meeting after that decision that you made to step in there, are you still married and raising children? And I'm just curious, I'm just trying to paint that picture of what life was like for you in those years.
I have been through 4 marriages, right? I was telling you earlier, the first marriage was extremely, it was violence filled, right? And so domestic violence is definitely a part of my history. That said, I married that man twice, right? I always say 10 years the first time, 10 months the second time. So I learned really, because it was back into the same cycle.
Right.
I was on that wheel. I was on the hamster wheel, right? And so once I got clean, by that time that marriage was done, right? By that time that marriage was done. So I'm really grateful for that. And then several years in recovery. So my story includes relapse, right? So I was clean for 8 years. In the first 8 years of my sobriety, I went back to school and I finished my undergrad degree, and I went on and got my MBA. Right, I started working for this great software company. I found I had an aptitude at software. So all these things started coming back in my life. I'm really grateful. When I got my first set, when I went to university and got straight A's in my undergrad degree, it was like I proved that there was still some gray matter, right? That was working. And then I got my MBA and I got 1 B out of the whole grade to the MBA. And I had this great job. I was doing all these things. And what I found was, there was this complacency that set in for me that said, all right, maybe I don't need this stuff anymore. Maybe I don't need 12-step program anymore. Maybe I don't need anything anymore, right? I got all my stuff back. I'm doing well, all this stuff. And the story is for me that this company that I was working for at the time sent me on a business trip to Europe, and I was in Germany, and a lot of things were happening in my life that led up to this. But I always talk about it as it was a real tumultuous trip. I ended up over there hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, right? So all of those things, that halt, right? And all of those things were coming up as a result of this. And I got in a place where I made a really bad decision. Yeah, the story is really fascinating, but to capsulize it, when I got there, what was on the table was dessert. Dessert was orange sherbet served in champagne. and I made a decision to get that. And I went back to my room, which had this lovely little mini bar in it. And by the time it was over, I drank like Denzel Washington drank at the end of the movie Flight, which is an incredible depiction of alcoholism.
Yes, it is.
Right. And I did that. I did exactly what he did at the end of the movie.
Wow.
And then I finished the conference and did what I was there to do. And I left the conference and I went to Amsterdam. And
perfect place for someone in recovery and relapsing.
Brilliant decision, right? But what was amazing to me is that in Amsterdam, right, I knew exactly what to do, exactly where to go. I morphed back into the person that I had been before I ever got clean, right? I knew exactly what to do, exactly where to go, exactly how to talk, exactly how to behave, exactly how to act, to find what I was looking for, the drug of choice that I was looking for in a foreign country.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
What was your drug of choice? What was it?
It really didn't matter, kind of like that. But at that time in particular, it was cocaine, right? And cocaine and heroin, right? So all of those, right? But at that point in time, we were in the midst of cocaine was a big focus. I was in the midst of cocaine being a huge focus.
So you're in Amsterdam, you're on a business trip, you're copping coke and heroin and drinking. Do you finish the conference and fly back?
I finished the conference before I flew to Amsterdam. I just didn't come home. I just didn't come home.
Okay.
Right? And I stayed there until I couldn't anymore. And I called someone for help, someone from the States, and they supported me, got me back to Boston where I was living, where I stepped into the rooms of the 12-step program again, right? And the story is that I was in the rooms of the 12-step program once again and stayed clean that way for 4 years, for 4 additional years. And in that 4 years was where I was reintroduced to yoga, right? I'd been introduced to yoga in the 70s, but I was introduced to it in a new and different way within that 4. I came back to it in that 4-year period. And at first it was hot yoga, and then I got real involved with the Ashtanga yoga practice, which I love, 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 right? I got real involved with it. And then I started, my teacher at the time would every year go over and study with her teacher in India, and I would sub for her in a school in the greater Boston area. And it was then that I really fell in love with yoga. You know, I go into this middle school, I teach this Ashtanga class, and I watch the effect that just the physical practice would have on the kids, right? The school administrator would love it when I come in. They say, you know, you leave in for 2 hours, these kids have an attention, a focus that's not present otherwise. And so I became really curious. What is it in this physical practice that would have that happen? And I started studying everything I could find, everything that I could put my hands on. I started reading about what it was, what else was going on. Something else had to be there. And that was when I started to discover in all this reading that there are a lot of similarities in yoga philosophy and 12-step philosophy. There are a lot of similarities. And I started connecting the dots around all that stuff. And so after 4 years of that, I decided, well, maybe I don't need these 12-step rooms anymore. I did that one again, right? I got this yoga thing. That's all I need. That must be all I need. And so after 4 years, I relapsed again. I relapsed a second. So I was clean for 8 years and I relapsed. And I was clean for 4 years and then I relapsed. And then I came back, and when I came back after that last relapse, I recognized, at least for someone like me, that the two things couldn't sit in separate boxes, that I needed the cognitive. And so it was out of that this marrying of the cognitive pieces of the 12-step program and the somatic pieces of yoga have occurred. And, I can very gratefully say now that, it's been 17 years now since the last relapse. And I know for me, it's this piece. It's the combination of this piece that added to my platform for recovery that has made a world of difference. Just it's at a whole new level, at a level I never, ever imagined.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's an incredible story. So you talk about relapsing, and I love that you talk about that because so many of us have that experience and we feel so much tremendous shame and guilt and embarrassment often when we go through a relapse. And what I'm loving from your story, and I have an experience with relapse as well, 4 years after I got sober the first time. And so I think that the lesson here is there is always a lesson with whatever's going on. And even in relapse, we can tend to want to look at it as a negative and that it's a failure. And yet it helps to lead us to the next stage, that it doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It doesn't have to stay there.
And my big thing with that is for me, is just that we can't hold on to that energy of toxic shame or any of that stuff. The deal is that when I hold on to it, it gets bigger, right? It's like it'll turn into something else.
Yeah.
That it gets bigger. Energy wants to move, and that's an energy. And if it can't move, then it's going to grow. It's going to come out sideways, right? So there's got to be a way that we can move that energy, and then it can turn into something helpful rather than into something that continues to be an obstacle on the path of recovery.
Oh, beautifully put. Now, in New York City, you talked a lot about codependency, and I know that's a big part of your work.
Yeah, I did.
And in this, you've been sharing that you've been married 4 times, and I wonder if part of that is because of a codependent relationship. You mentioned the one man that you were married to 10 years and then 10 months.
Right.
How does codependency play in? Yeah. How can we see it in our own lives, and how can we heal it and move past it?
I love that you asked that question. What a great question. Codependency is a funny thing, and it's one of those things that I assert over the years has been diluted and bastardized and all that. Even some of the definitions you hear for it are like, oh my God, right? So the way that we work with it in Y12SR is we call codependency the disease of the lost self. We lose ourselves. And anytime I look outside of myself for something that can only come from the inside, I'm in a codependent relationship with whatever that is. And, like I said, there have been times in my life when I've been in a codependent relationship with Nordstrom's, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because I'll run to Nordstrom's, when I don't want to deal with something in myself, and I'll go shopping, I'll pick up that item, I'll come home, and, after a while, it's almost like I got the same kind of hangover I get up the next day and I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I buy that? I know I really should. I don't really need it, right? I'm in the same cycle.
The guilt, the shame, and then the spending of the money, and then we think we shouldn't have spent the money, and totally the same thing. So your point is that we can be codependent on the drugs and alcohol or whatever the heck it is that we're using, or shopping, sex, social media, anything else.
That's it. Another person, my computer, my TV. I mean, it goes on and on and
food.
On. And food without question. I always say that you have no idea. When I don't want to feel the feeling that's going on inside me, boy, can I be in a codependent relationship with cookies, And I'm looking for that. I'm just looking for a little comfort and ease to soothe what I'm unwilling to really face.
Yes.
And to really look at. Now, and again, I always like to make this distinction. Nothing's wrong with cookies.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with Nordstrom's. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about my relationship. If I'm using it to run away, right, then I need to take a look.
And are we giving our power to that other thing as opposed to holding on to that power inside of ourselves?
Yes, I need to take a look at that. I definitely need to take a look at that. So yes, we do a lot of work. I assert that any addict, right, any alcoholic, you know, sooner or later, you got to get to the codependency work. You have to get to the work of the disease of the lost self. Right. And that's another thing that I think the yoga and the yoga practice and the philosophy add to recovery. You know, yoga is all about union. It's all about reintegrating all parts of ourselves. I don't make any part of myself bad, awful, and wrong, right? All parts of myself get to come and play in this, right? It's all here. And if I don't acknowledge it, right, I'm telling you, my experience is it will definitely come out sideways, right? So everybody gets to reintegrate all parts of myself.
It's absolutely beautiful. I love the marriage of all of these pieces that just have worked together and blended seamlessly to create this program that works for you and for so many other people. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. Thank you for being here. I want to ask you, what are some other tools? Obviously, 12-step and recovery and yoga are all part of what you do to take care of yourself. What are some other tools that you use that are in your tool shed?
Yeah, community. I have some girlfriends, right? There's a set of girlfriends actually that I call my sister wives, right? They're my sister wives, right? And you know, I know that they've got my back and I know that I've got theirs. And we're just in this community relationship with each other that means so. You know, I'll say this a lot. Recovery is one of those things that while no one can do it for you, you can't do it by yourself. You cannot do this one by yourself. We don't have to be codependent, nor do we have to be anti-dependent. We're interdependent beings. We need each other, right? We're interdependent beings. And so I have found that I need my tribe. I need my community. I need my sister wives, right? In order to help me. They help me. You know, sometimes you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. Right? So they help me to see, you know, objectively what I would only see subjectively.
And that's such a great point.
Really important.
Oh, it's so important. And it's funny, I was having a conversation yesterday with a woman in recovery, and she was saying, do I need my husband or partner to understand what I'm going through? Because he doesn't understand, he's not addicted to alcohol, and yet she is. And so she's saying, do I need him to understand? And I think that the message that we all sort of shared with her was, no, you know, they unfortunately, though, normies or whatever we want to call people that don't have addiction to substance issues, they don't have that point of reference. So for them, it's just not a conversation that they're able to really get deep into, but that's okay. That is what the community is for.
That's right.
I do think that it's important to have the people in your life, whether it's just online, as I know a lot of people don't have access to people in real life, but
that's right.
Most people can find a 12-step meeting, or they can find something where they can connect in real life. But the point just being, we need to connect with others that understand our language and understand what we're sharing with them, because it's the deep, shameful, embarrassing, you know, hard stuff that when we can finally speak those words, that's such a big part of the healing.
Right on. Right on. I couldn't have said that better. So that's a big piece of my tool shed, you know, one of the biggest pieces in the tool shed. And then it's, you know, all the other things that you're talking about here. It's the things relative to self-care, right? I have a practice and a ritual and a process, right? And it's just a prayer and meditation are very important to me. right? And the things I do in the physical practice are all a part of the platform for recovery, as well as, really taking my care of myself relative to food and all of those things. So watching all of those things are really, really, really important for me.
So important. I think that taking care of the physical structure of our body, I think it goes underrated. I think at the beginnings of when we're in early recovery, I know a big thing that I deal with, I coach clients, and a lot of the time they'll say, can't I just, fuck it, let me eat the cookies. Like I've kicked the heroin or the cocaine or the alcohol. Like, can't I just enjoy this damn plate of brownies? I mean, why not? And I think that we can do that for a little bit of time, but sometimes it can get away from us.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Because like you said, we can start to develop that codependent relationship with the plate of cookies. And
until, my experience is that until we get at what's underneath there, to the trauma, right? To those pieces. And, we think about trauma now in the newest studies and definition around trauma it's different than what we normally think it is, right? Yeah. It's not just a war trauma or accidents or any of those kinds of
or sexual trauma or physical abuse as a child. Yeah.
Right. Could be so much more, right? So this whole conversation about what is really sitting underneath that, what's being held underneath that until I can get at that, what I've discovered is, and I know from my own recovery, that I'll play, what we talk about is whack-a-mole, right?
Yes.
I whack down the drugs and alcohol and shopping and spending money popped up. And I whacked that one down and relationships popped up. Yep. I whacked that one down. So I'll just continue to play whack-a-mole until I get at what's underneath there.
And how do you, I know that you deal with this in Y12SR, but how for somebody just saying, okay, fine, I was neglected as a child, I was abused as a child, I saw something when I was younger, whatever the case may be, what is your recommendation? To take pen to paper and to write it out, or to tell somebody?
Well, the answer for that, my teacher says the answer to everything is it depends, right? So there are a lot of factors to consider in something like that. But there are lots of ways to approach that kind of thing, right? CBT and therapy, right? Those kinds of things. Then there's specific trauma healing methodologies, right? Like tapping, like EMDR, like somatic experiencing, like all those kinds of things. So if the trauma's deep enough, because some traumas you may not even know about. It could be birth trauma, where your cells have recorded it and they understand, right? But I may not even have, it may have happened pre-verbally, so I don't even have language, right, around any of those kinds of things. So first, it just kind of depends. I have found, though, as a tool, journaling and all of those kinds of things play a big part in releasing these things.
Yeah, I agree. Right?
Yeah.
Just absolutely. Even having the guts and the lady balls or the balls to write it out and to look at it on the page or to say it to one other person. I have an experience.
That's the 12-step program. You get it out. You say it to a trusted individual, right? You have that conversation. If we don't, I talk about this quite a bit in our training, we become, there was this great song by the recording artist Erykah Badu, right? And she talked about becoming a bag lady. And she's, of course, not talking physical, but how we just put these emotional things in our bag and we carry them from relationship to relationship. And we become emotional bag ladies, bag men, right? If we don't get this stuff up and out and in order to deal with that.
And all it does is that it weighs down the new relationships that we're trying to enter into. And yet we haven't healed it or ditched the bag in the last relationship. And so we're just carrying it on forward. as we go until, like you say, until we actually acknowledge it, look at it, bring it out into the light, feel it, go through it, and then get rid of it.
Like I said,
Yeah.
I married four aspects. I married my father 4 times. Different aspects of my father.
Yes.
4 times. I
Mm-hmm.
married different aspects of my father.
Mm.
Right?
Are you married now? Are you married today?
I am not, but I am in a long-term serious relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so healing.
Mm.
It really has, in so many ways. It's been, we're now in 5 years. And
Congratulations.
yeah. And
Can I ask, is he also in recovery?
he is not. He is, he does some work around, I think we all have little codependency pieces and things like that. And he's real aware of the work per se, but he's one of those that, unlike me, never had a problem with drugs or alcohol or substances or process behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So there really are people, it blows my mind,
I know.
but there really are people out there that it just ain't me. And I know that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's okay. And what I love is that I'm meeting so many women where I think they're feeling like they have to get into a relationship with someone else in recovery because otherwise they won't be understood. And I'm in a relationship with someone who is in recovery. And I think that it's fabulous and wonderful that we get that opportunity to share and we understand each other on that level. But it wouldn't be required necessarily that he be,
right.
like I get that for other people, it's not a requirement and it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm. I love, and he can be 100% him and allow me to be 100% me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then we come together in coupleship, and the coupleship is 100% in its coupleship.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, it's been a really beautiful and healing thing.
That's fabulous. I'm so happy for you that you found that in your life. And I just have to say, it's like, I want to adjust my screen because to think that you're going to be, did you say 65?
65.
I mean, it's
true. It's true.
I mean, I'm, not to stereotype, but your African-American skin is the best skin going. We all know that because you don't deal with sun damage the way that Caucasians do. Your skin is spectacular. And I would love to assume that it's also this healthy lifestyle that you lead and this whole.
It definitely is.
Mm-hmm, yeah, you radiate from the inside out.
Oh, thank you. And I wish I could take credit for a lot of that. I can say that it does have a lot to do with some choices that I've made in recovery about really being in deep relationship with myself, right? Really caring for myself and being in deep relationship with myself.
I love the way that sounds, being in deep relationship with myself. I think so often, especially in early recovery, people think, oh my gosh, so now I'm going to get sober. I'm going to have to ditch all those people that I was drinking or drugging with, which is usually true. I personally changed my friendships when I first got sober. And I think so many of us think that that's, those are the only people that we're going to be able to connect with. And it's like, you know what, you can connect with yourself. And it's the most beautiful process to uncover who we really are and to get closer to who we were meant to be by getting to really uncovering, like you talk about, getting closer to those codependent relationships, uncovering the trauma, working through it, and then becoming the best versions of ourselves in recovery. It's absolutely, you're a spectacular example of that.
I love it. And I tell people all the time, the big secret is it's subtraction. There's nothing to add. We're whole and complete, right? We're whole and complete. So the job is just chipping away all the bullshit that we put on top of this wholeness, right? It's like Michelangelo and the David, he saw David in the stone and his job was just chipping away all that was not David. And that's us. That's the deal. That's the job. Chipping away all this bullshit we put on top, and we get it from everywhere. You get it as a woman. All you got to do is look at, in our culture, a woman for the exact same job makes less than a man, right? We got these binaries we set up. this is better than this, right? Good, bad, right, wrong, inferior, superior, the whole 9 yards. I mean, just in the job, that says when we're in a culture that success is pretty much defined by money, and you make less than a man, that says your value is less than a man. So we get these cultural influences, right? We get all these kind of influences, and our job is chipping away all that bullshit. We're whole and complete, right? In our own right.
And we are whole and complete. And it brings me to a thought when you were saying that, okay, fine, we can say it's all, we're whole and complete. But the reality is that women are making less money than men. So how do we reconcile that and say, that's just the way it is? Right. I think there's a point to be made that we need to fight for what we deserve. And then there's also a point to say, that's how things are. And I'm still whole and complete in me. How do we reconcile all of those mixed messages?
The great question. I love you asked that question. For me, it kind of works like this. I recognize that the way that I phrase it, we live in the matrix. It's like the Matrix. It's like the movie The Matrix. And we're in the matrix. And the only way out of the matrix is first to admit that you're in it. You got to say, this is where I live. This is where I am, before there's any possibility to move beyond that, right? It was kind of like, for me, when I admitted that I was an addict and an alcoholic, and really admitted that that was true for me, then I had the possibility to move beyond that. There was no possibility. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge.
Totally.
Right? You got to tell the truth first. Right? And so for me, this is, I am in the matrix, right? I know that I am. I'm in this binary matrix. And I know that that's where I live. And now that gives me the opportunity to move beyond the matrix. I always say, I wish that I had this one. I wish I could say this is my quote, but I think it belongs to Jesus, right? So, which was said, we can live in the world and not be of it, right? I can live in it, and I have to. I live in it. But I don't have to be of this stuff, right? Right? And so that's back to what we were speaking to before, the and. How can I hold both of those things? How can I hold both those things, right? And that's the work.
Oh, that is the work. And it made me think of the fact that you have created this business, this work in the world where no one else is doing it. So there isn't a man making more than Nikki Myers in the same space. You created what you saw was needed in the world, and you went after it and did it with your own hands and your own heart and with the community around you. And so,
and more importantly for me, and it came out of the hell that I experienced. So what was the crisis, what was the hell, turned into the gift of my life. It's the gift of my life. And that's possible. I always tell people, if I can do this, anybody can do it, right? And the way that I say that, somebody told me that, right? I ran into, this is such a beautiful story for me, it gives me goosebumps. I ran into a woman before I came into sobriety, before I found the 12-step program. And I ran into someone who I was on the streets with. And I looked at her and she was different. She had cleaned up. Last time I saw her, she didn't even have any teeth. And I saw her and she had cleaned up. She looked good and all of that. And she looked at me and she just said, if I can do this, you can do this, right? And I believed her. I believed that, right? And so if I can do this stuff, anybody can do it. It's available for anyone.
It really is available for anyone. And I applaud you for what you did, but it reminds me to say it to anybody watching right now that thinks that this is not possible because it feels too hard. If we can do it, the people that are talking on this platform, if Nikki can do it, you absolutely have everything inside of you to do it too. But it really does take
at a time.
Yeah,
It's just
one day at a time.
put that phrase I got from the 12-step program.
Yeah.
You put one foot
Yeah.
in front of the other. You
Yes.
do the next good, right, honest thing. You know, and you
Mhm.
just keep putting staying in the present moment,
Mhm.
putting one foot in front of the other.
That's
Right?
such a, and it's so true that, one day at a time, we hear it all of the time, but the number of times I'll receive requests from people saying, just tell me how you did it. Like, how did you actually get sober? Like, how did you string time together? And it's like, you really do just do it one breath, one moment, one day at a time. Like, there's no magic way to make time speed up. You just gotta do it. You gotta.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I love it. I
That is
love
it.
it.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What is the best thing about being clean and sober?
The ability to be in the present moment, right? The ability to recognize what a gift life is. Life really is a gift, right? And, particularly as I age, I mean, I'm under no delusion about the way that this ends, right? As far as this, right? As far as this physical being, I know it transforms, right? So I have no delusions about that. But the gift to watch life as I watch my grandchildren, as I watch my great-grandchildren, as I watch my friends, as I watch my relationships. Life is precious. It really is a precious gift. And to be able to just be a part of this precious gift is beyond the best. It is beyond the best.
And living mired in addiction, for those of us that are out of it on the other side, I mean, it really is a precious gift. And yet when you're in addiction, you feel like the only way to get through life is to use that drug of choice. And yet, oh my gosh, the beauty and what abounds on that other side, there's nothing like it. And I agree with you. I believe the same, that my addiction and my recovery are just the greatest teachers and then lessons and blessings in my life. And it's hard to believe that when you're in crisis, when you're feeling like, you've made all these mistakes and shit's going crazy and you've got to quit whatever it is because it's ruining your life. But to imagine a life without it is so painful and terrifying. But to just believe that you can get through those first few days and continue to build on it. But you do need community. You do need a plan. You do need people around you. And Y12SR could be exactly the thing out there for someone watching right now that you need. So check out Y12SR.com and check out Nikki Myers' story there. There's some videos on her website and all sorts of amazing resources. But get yourself into something that's going to help you to string some of that time together. Nikki, I have one last question that I borrow from Oprah. Nikki,
what's that?
It's the best one. What do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? I think I gotta go back to what I said just a moment ago. I know for sure that life is precious.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know for sure is that I don't even know what I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good one. I love it.
I don't even know what I don't know. So I'm not even going to pretend like I know it all, or that I got this, or that, I don't even know what I don't know. And there's a humility in that for me that allows an openness to receive from all the gift of the universe of life, right? And so I guess that's one of the biggies for me, that I don't even know when I don't know. And I'm okay with that today.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you so much for this. I feel like we have just gone to church today and we have learned some new things with Nikki Myers. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for doing the work that you do. It matters. You're amazing. Keep it up.
And back to you. I always say it takes one to know one, right? You have to see it. It has to be in you for you to see it in someone else. So thank you for the work that you're doing. It's tremendous, and reaching a lot of people and opening a lot of hearts and all that good stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Nikki Myers. This was just a dream. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.